Welcome back to the channel. As usual, I appreciate your attention. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. I'm a new channel, but as you can see, just from being here, maybe 10 or so days, I've got maybe 18 to 20 videos because I think it's important to talk about a thing and then to actually live it. So a lot of my free time is dedicated to come up with ideas, sitting down, going over it, having some fun with reaction videos, just so we can work on momentum, right? But what I wanted to talk about is I want to create a channel that's not just solution based, not just reaction videos, not just about culture, whatever's happening, but a place where we can work on things together to get better. So, especially for men, because I think we're still lacking in that space. We're still lacking a safe haven for men to come and say, these are the things that have been plaguing me. These are the things that I'm wondering about. These are the things that I have nowhere else to turn. So one of these things that I've been thinking about is what would I have liked to have to see when I was coming up, 18, 19, 20, even 30s. And the one piece of advice that always sort of rattles around in my brain is that it gets greater later. If, right? And again, this is a perspective really for men, because until I can maybe do some couple live streams, we'll get some women to chime in about what their experience was. We can only listen to their stories and, make assumptions or try to make inferences from what they're saying. But for men, as a man, and at one point, a young man, we're full of potential, we're full of ideas, some of us are full of drive, right? And we hear a lot of times women now saying, I don't want to date potential, you want the finished product. So because we can talk about the finished product all day long. But when we're younger, right? For you guys that are still young, if any young men are watching this channel, hopefully one time in the future we'll create that space and that community. If you do the work, right, things get much better later. And I guess it's a little bit of a story time. I remember 19, 20 years old, 21, and working among some of my friends. And it was always this hustle, right? That was the name of the game. You gotta hustle, right? We would call each other 2, 3 in the morning, and I'm gonna avoid saying names because I don't know how you guys feel about just being sort of outed in a public domain. It's up to you guys. We'll have those conversations later offline. But I was surrounded by ambitious men. We just didn't know what that ambition would turn into. We would call each other early in the morning, trying to do overtime, right? Calling up, hey, I talked to this person. They said if you can get people to come in, well, yeah, we were part-time. Some of us were part-time in spaces working with full-time employees. I mean, I'm talking part-time, $28,000 a year, and we would just crush overtime, right? We just had this urge, like, I need more, right? And it wasn't necessary for excess, right? We had examples of seeing what people did with their money, right? At 19 years old, I'm working with adults, and I'm watching as some of them seem to occupy one or two spaces. Either you had a car or you had an apartment. We just weren't making enough to really do both comfortably. And at the time, I'm living at home, right? So, of course, that urge, that societal push to say, yo, you need to get your own space, get an apartment, do your own thing. And I'm part-time, I'm working part-time, and I'm in college. I'm starting college full-time. So the load is still there. Like, my attention is split, and most of the mental faculties are going towards college. And growing up with Nigerian parents, it was education or bust. So I needed more money. Right? I was also paying my way through college. Whatever was left over from any Pell Grants or scholarships, I had to pay. So any type of time, any type of opportunity to get overtime, it was manna from heaven. So we would scheme, we would grind, we would write out on tiny sheets of paper. Oh, if I can get 16 hours on Monday, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. Then the next day, if I can come in early before the shift and I can stay late. And we would plan out our entire week like this, our entire 2 weeks, and just say, okay, I'm trying to hit 80 hours. Now I'm technically full-time. Then boom, if I can get another 30 on top of that, ooh, I'll be in good standing. And we did this week. Personally, I didn't really understand what vacation was. I just saw the more I can do, the less my parents would have to worry about me. The less they'd have to pour into me, the more I could help them out if there's a bind, if there's a jam. The more I could pay for whatever tuition and books and anything I need, the easier the load is anywhere else. So when I would watch people get their cars, and I'd be shocked. I remember this one friend of mine, he got a G35. And I was amazed. I was like, wait, we can do that on this salary? And he's just like, yep. So it became like my new obsession, right? I want one of those. Had my little Altima, shout out to Nissan, shout out to Infiniti. And I remember just grinding away, trying to get this thing. Same thing in school. You're trying to get this degree, grinding away. And that was all it was. It was a grind. But meanwhile, I'm watching people almost enviously get the things out of life that I would want. Women, cars, apartments, vacations, doing all the dope things, right? That life and experience is supposed to be about. And here I am, just looking at another small printout on white printer paper of all the overtime that I need to do. Even after I went full-time at the job, I'm still full-time, both places, college and work. It was just like, okay, now I'm guaranteed the 80 hours. I still want 30 more, right? And that became the thing. That grind culture, especially being from New York, it's a natural phenomenon where it seeps into your blood. We can discuss whether it's poisonous or not, but it seeps in there, it lives there. So that's what we did. I mean, even when we took time to get our little toys, little motorcycles, right? Being little young men, it was still, okay, I'm gonna sacrifice now for later, right? That became the crux. You sacrifice now for later. We didn't understand, or the term wasn't coined for delayed gratification. It was just always like the setup, right? You do this for a later reward. And you got to the later reward, and then there was another grind. There was another thing to work for, to be ready to set up for. It's just this never-ending sort of cycle. So when you're in the minutia of it, right? When you're in the middle of it, it's hard to understand. It's hard to realize what this is all for, right? It's just paycheck to paycheck. We used to have other employees look at us and look at this hustle and grind, and they would question it. They said, Uncle Sam's just gonna take a bigger portion. All that overtime you're doing is going nowhere. And at the time, we still don't have any real idea of how the tax code was working and sort of brackets and where we were in relation to everything else. We just knew I needed more than what working normally would provide. So we did it, right? It became a culture. So much so that we started inspiring other full-time employees, especially when, it was weird, back then when you would get paid, not when you get paid, when you get your W-2, it was almost like this competition. So how much did you make? How much did you make? I remember making $28,000 on paper as part-time and then bringing in like $56,000. And eyes widened, jaws got slacked, and they adopted that culture of hustle, right? They borrowed it, right? They borrowed it because the creature comforts were easier to rely back on. It wouldn't be too long before they would say, okay, when you do overtime, let me know. Hey, how do you do this? How do you do this? And we would share. We didn't gatekeep the secrecy because we knew what it was. Just hard work, right? Going and looking for it and saying no to the nice things now. Back when going to DR was a vacation, going to Jamaica, Montego Bay from New York on a little vacation, but that was it. I didn't have an understanding of why someone took time off, right? I just thought the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow was coming. But again, looking at it from a very narrow micro view at the time, if I would have known that, yeah, that journey, that pot of gold spans a decade and a half, right? The real goal isn't in what it's going to allow you to do tomorrow or next week. And that's what we get a lot of. We call them passengers, right? Overtime passengers. Ship's heading out, right? It's a cruise ship. They jump on, they jump off. They jump on, they jump off. We were the captains, right? We were the captive crew. We had to work this. We just did it. We just did it. When you were tired, and I remember one of good friends, business partner, he would call me. I was, again, dating myself. Back when the cool thing to do would have a sidekick, a T-Mobile sidekick, and a Nextel. And he would hit me up. He would page me something like 2, 3 in the morning, just, yeah. And he had an overtime scheme. He had a way, he had permission. Hey, they said if you came in, if we come in now, we can get it. So the first response is, all right, who else is gonna go? Who else is signed up? And when you heard it was some passengers, all right, I gotta go. I gotta represent for us. So there was even a shameful component in it. Hey, these people are doing it, you gotta get it. Hey, what's your overtime situation scenario look like? I've already got the schema set up. I'm already good on my hours. But if everyone else is there, I gotta show up, I gotta do it. So we did so much overtime, we became sort of famous for it. Snowstorms were good because it's a great opportunity where people couldn't make their shift and we would just stay. I remember doing something like, I think the morning shift, the mid shift, the night shift, and then the overnight shift. And then the next morning, I'm still there ready to do my shift. And my manager comes and looks like, Easy, did you go home? I said, well, how do you define home? He's like, you finish your shift, clock out, go home. You got me. But I did something like 226 and a half hours in 2 weeks. And I strictly learned my lesson, dead on your feet, gotten sick, right? There's limits to the grind. There's limits to what your body can actually properly handle. But it was the spirit is effort. So that sort of served me going forward. Everything I sort of attacked, I did it with this gusto, right? This channel. One of my friends, we were talking on WhatsApp and discussed like, oh, you have a YouTube channel. I was like, yeah, it's new. And then she went and saw, she was like, you have, for something that's new, you have like 15 videos. I was like, yeah, you know me. She's like, yeah, you don't stop. Even my mom, she'll describe me as like relentless. And it starts from way back then, right? With the idea that it gets greater later. If you put in the effort, if you put in the time, if you're stubborn enough to do what you need to do to get to the end of the rainbow. When I talk about my siblings, who I love dearly, I talk about how naturally talented they are in various capacities. And my talent was being stubborn. My talent was being born in the middle of two amazing people. So when I saw the things that they could do, I wanted to be able to do them. My sister got praised for reading. So what did I do? I started reading. Valedictorian in elementary school. We used to have the same teachers and we're like a year apart. So when they would say, oh, I had your sister, she was so lovely. And I remember in 5th grade, I said, I'm nothing like that. And I shot myself in the foot. I certainly did. But I was absolutely right. She was studious. She was outgoing. I was moody and going through growth spurts. I was lazy. Couldn't do well, and I didn't really care to do the work except when it came test time. And undeniably, I was like, he's smart. He's just lazy, right? That's my father. That's a quote from my father. Talk to my mom. So when I watched what my siblings did, I got better. Right? That's that stubborn. That's that do the work and the reward is coming. My brother naturally just taking photos. So that's cool. I want to do that. And I parlayed that into, I taught myself photography and then jumped into videography and just always had this idea that I've got to hustle. I've got to do the work, right? I built the real estate business based on that same thing. Sacrifice because later on, it's better. I think part of the problem is trying to tell people that now, today. Try to tell men that now. You want to be better at something. You want the results from from years, decades of hard work, but you want it now. That delayed gratification isn't a thing, just like it wasn't in my vocabulary when I was young. It's not a thing now. It may be common vernacular, common speech, but it's still hard to tell someone. For example, I remember in high school, right, 16 years old or so, I remember talking to my father in the kitchen, and he's washing dishes, and I'm telling him, like, how do I have sex, right? How do I get a girlfriend? I'm watching everyone do this easily, right? What it seems to be easy. So I'm confident he's had sex, right? At least 3 times. I have 2 siblings, so at least 3 times you've done it. Without missing a beat, he just tells me, focus on your schoolwork. Women will come. And if I was raised in the wild, I would have attacked him. Like, what type of information is that? Yeah, it wasn't until years later I saw the wisdom in it. Yeah, do all the things that you have to do. Do the important things now. That comes later. That delayed gratification, that's what it is. It comes later. It gets greater later. Again, there's a big if. As men, we can't wait. Let's say women are like, just, we'll use women as a focus here. You want a good woman, right? And you want what you see online. You want these IG baddies, and you want to shout the rhetoric that the wall is coming, that they're going to have to settle. And if your idea is to be ready and waiting to swoop in to be what she settles with, she's not. That's a bad idea. You focus on you. You make yourself better, right? And it takes time. I know you don't want to hear it's going to take 10 years of hard work for you until it's your turn at bat. That's the last thing you want to hear. But it's one of those ugly truths that men should get used to facing. If women don't want you for potential, you're going to have to start converting some of that to kinetic, to real accolades, to real points on the board. Or you could be one of the cautionary tales, one of the passengers on this overtime, hard work, grind cruise ship. You can jump in when you want to save money for a quick vacation, or there's an emergency that happens and now you're scrambling to do something about it. Or you can just kind of put your head down and do the work, right? Now, at our big ages, right, where we have to really start looking at how our end of life really looks like. You don't want to have a work ethic of just cruising. You want to have a body of work that's already going to see you further, where, of course, you still grind, but now you have more opportunities. You have more resources to enjoy your life. Now, when you talk to women, you're not just talking at a place of desperation, or you're not trying to inundate them with facts about, hey, the wall's coming and you're not as attractive. And no one really wants to hear that, right? When greater later means it's really just about you, right? Again, put the woman aside. It's about you and extracting as much value as you can from life. It's like accumulating as many skills as possible. Like, life is for the living. It's for those that want to reach out and grab it, rather than saying, this is what I had ready and waiting for you, and I hand you your ticket. No. I didn't know that was greater later. I just knew that I wanted more than I had today. I just didn't realize that tomorrow was maybe a decade and a half. But each day I'm feeling more and more fortunate that was the mindset that I had adopted, that I knew I needed to do more if I wanted more. That's a really good way to end this, right? Don't be afraid of the work, i.e., here's this YouTube channel, and like anything in its infancy, it's nowhere near what it's as good as it's going to be as when it's polished over time. Right now, I'm on the move. Like, my life is usually on the move, but I'm making time to do the things that I've said is important. I want this channel to grow. It's not going to grow on. It's not going to grow by me not putting into it. I can't really request that you like, comment, and subscribe if I don't give any videos, or if I'm not showing the effort that's putting in. I think that's a reciprocal law of nature. You get out what you put in. So I hope this inspires any one of you to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys on the next one.